how to install them. In essence, step by step, how I did it. I've got a 2012 Street Glide. I looked on the HD forum, I looked on V-Twin forum. There's lots of questions about these lights, but no indication of how to actually do it. So I've done this install completely myself. I'm not a mechanic, I'm not a bike mechanic or whatever. I'm just a regular Joe dude who likes to ride bikes. Had a couple others before this one, so I've done some work on those and thought, hey, I can probably take this project on myself. So this is the project, installing CiriusUSA flush mount LED crash bar lights. Thanks. Here's my bike. I've got underbag light strip, under rear fender light strip, assuming it's still working. Yep. Horn, engine, wheel, halo on the headlight, and the other side. Pretty cool too. I like it. So I'm going to set the camera down, and we shall turn on the Cirius USA driving lights. I'm going to do it with just accessory. So there she has it. Gotta admit, those are pretty damn bright. And this is in a garage, so I'm going to try to get it out on the road tonight, see how it looks, but keep in mind this bike's up in the air 16 inches, give or take. But those are certainly enough to draw some extra attention, which is the intent. And again, this is a dark garage, so they're perfectly going to suit my needs, because I'm just trying to get a little extra light in the dead spot my headlight doesn't cover. And those are pretty bright. They look pretty cool. So I would say all in all, the project probably took me an hour to set up the drilling and drill. Do it slow. I hand tapped it too, so that's a little extra time. Doing the wiring part of it, the biggest drawback, if you use the tip of using fine gauge wire to fish through to the holes and then use a hanger to catch that, will save you a ton of time. I jerked around with a lot of stuff I had read about putting dental floss in the holes and trying to use the vacuum to suck it through. That didn't work. I tried yarn. That was even more miserable. There's not enough interference from the string under the vacuum I had. I mean, if you had a super high pressure shop vac, that might be a different story. So I found that this fine gauge wire, it's like twining or like wreath making wire, so it's still rigid but it bends, worked really well. I got that wire through into the hole, caught, and then the wire strung through in probably 5 minutes. After less than that, after I've actually figured out that that's what I had to do, that was the way to go. Use a fine gauge, like wreath making wire or florist wire. Run that through to the hole. Use a hanger with like a hook, a twisted over hook in it, that you can run through your front, 1/4 inch hole to catch your other wire, and you're rocking and rolling. That was the biggest pain in the ass part of this project. The rest of it, getting the wiring, I had a Deutsch plug. Go to your dealer for the bike that you have. In front of the battery, there's a Deutsch plug. It's an accessory plug that operates off that front right switch, accessory switch. So I can leave these lights on all the time. And there it is. That's how the project came out. I thank the guys at Cirius for all their help in answering my questions, and hope everyone else finds this video helpful. Like I said, I'll try to get it out on the road and show you what it looks like tonight. Meanwhile, there it is. The total project with wiring, getting the stuff fished through, doing the drilling. And I am no shop expert by any means. I took my time, I was diddling around with a couple other things. So I'd say all told, I've got 2.5 hours tied up in getting that completely done. So there you have it. Hopefully these guys can use this video and it'll help other people do the same project. You can use it all hand tools. I would imagine pulling the crash bars off altogether and having them run on a drill press would be a heck of a lot easier. That was a project I didn't want to take on because I've got the lowers, and that's just a pain in the butt to go through all that. So it's done. There you go. Alright, this is the outer shroud for the CiriusUSA LED lamp here. What I'm doing, since I know that my peg clamps are at exactly the same height on both sides, I'm using those as a guide. So I've snapped the cover on, and what I did to make sure that I'm providing enough clearance in the event I need to do something with a peg, I've got a 3/16 hex that I'm laying flat there, and then I used a Sharpie just to mark the hole locations, top and bottom, both sides. Showing a Gator Tools. It's a drill and tap guide. Well, this is a drill guide, and I'm just connecting it to the bar with an Irvin quick grip. Hold it in place so that I can drill straight, and it should prevent it from slipping all around, creating any damage to my paint. I'll do that for all the holes. Okay, so I've got my first hole drilled. I also have a tap, so I will tap it just to make sure I've got the proper alignment. So I'm going to set the one screw in on my outer mount so that I've got the proper spacing between the holes, and then I'll go from there. I'll drill the second, which is marked, but I don't know. I want to be certain that they line up properly. I will get that done, and then I will tap that. I also have to drill this, pre-drill it, and then that will become a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to start with this 632 drill, then I'll go up to the 1/4 inch that's required for the wiring harness or wires to go through. Okay, I've got my 3 holes drilled. One here, which I already have tapped. I've got a pilot hole here for my 1/4 inch, and I've got this hole here. It's slightly above my mark because this one floated just very slightly. So I'm going to tap it now, and from there I will then expand this hole, and I'll do the same to the other side. Okay, I just finished up. We'll show you what I did here real quick. Just to get the front axle out of the way, I ran a soft bungee from the steering wheel, or steering handlebars, down over the foot peg, which was enough to get the front wheel and the fender out of the way far enough that I could drill a hole right up where the engine guard mounts to the frame itself. So it's about 1.5 inches off there. Started with the 632 and expanded it up to 1/4 inch. From there, I jump to the other side, drill the holes there. As I said, before I move on any further, I did a quick pre-fit to make sure that the covers fit both sides, so my drill and taps were correct, just so I didn't get ahead of myself and run into problems. The point of fishing wires through, and ultimately what I found is that the gauge wire, the electrical wire that's being submitted for this project is too thick to fit through the 1/4 inch hole. So up at the top, up here, where you're going to be fishing the wires through, you're not going to be able to fit two lengths of wire from each side in, well, rather out through the 1/4-inch hole. Ultimately, what I decided to do was drill a second hole. So I tapped it 6/30 seconds here, then I bored it out again to 1/4 inch. I've used a length of really fine gauge wire and put a bit of a curl in the end of it, wrapped it around my finger a couple times so that as it came down through the crash bar tubing, I would be able to see it coming out of this little 1/4 inch hole. I then used a piece of wire hanger with a little hook on it so that I could pull the wire through the hole. So now I'm going to pull this wire through. I'm going to connect my electrical wires up here, pull them through so I have my main length running so I can run it through the tunnel, and out to here. I'll solder on the Cirius lighting to the wires that are coming through. Once I've got all that lined up and set to go, I'll pull them back up. Apparently there's silicone that used to go here and behind the lens between the crash bar, but I'll pop on the next time I get to that second or that moment. Okay, here's where I'm at now. I've got my second wire fed through the second hole that I drilled on this side of the crash bar, fed through to here. I've stripped it so it's a clean wire. I've slid on some shrink tubing so I can cover up my solder point. On the light itself, this is the light strip with its wiring. I've added a piece of shrink tubing at the top, thought being that that's going to be coming through that hole. So once I figure out where the wiring comes through, I'll shrink that on just to provide a little extra abrasive resistance. So I'm going to go ahead and get these wires soldered up, covered up on both sides. I'm also going to feed some shrink tubing up the main wires that I'm using to the holes. So once I figure out where they're going to be, I'm going to add some shrink tubing there just to add a little extra abrasive resistance. Aside from that, I'll come back when I've got the next step ready to roll. Alright, I got my wires run. So I've got two wires here, one coming from the left side, or right side, one coming from the left side. I've got shrink wrap or shrink tubing on them just to provide an extra little abrasive. These wires are still at this point not finished because I've got to go get some silicone sealant. From there, they're running up over the front mount. I've got the two wires zip tied together. I'm going to run them, up underneath the fuel reserve, up into the tunnel, drop them down here on my Deutsch plug, which already has an accessory connector on it. So this is a Y. So here's my two good wires that I need to use. These two will be taped together. These run stuff in the back or off the brake light, so I'll just tuck them down the wiring. That's about it. Fishing the wires out was kind of a pain. And then ascertaining which were the hot on my Deutsch was a bit of a hassle as well. But making progress right now. I've got the tank bolt out. Just got to lift it up with some electrical tape to make it a little easier to use. I've got my bag off just so I can get to the battery. And more to come. Alright. My wiring is done. I have it fed down through the tunnel. Two wires here strapped together. I've got it connected to the Deutsch plug accessory on a Y. My two additional wires that you might use for something in the back connected to the ignition or ancillary are right there taped together. I've just got them tucked down kind of out of the way. Here's the Deutsch plug from the Y. Here are the two wires coming in here. So all that will sit down nicely into the seat. My cable's here good. All my wiring is tucked up underneath there. It's relatively out of the way. So I should be in good shape there. I'm going to give this a little extra tug just to make sure it stays up there. And most importantly, I do have LED light. on both sides. So now it's a matter of buttoning these things up, sealing them, getting the covers on, putting the seat and all that back together, and I'll show you when it's done. Okay, last step of the project, get the light inserted, installed. You got to put silicone sealant on the inside of the lens, the part that actually connects to the tubing. So all around this inner edge here, likely to keep moisture out. Then you snap it in place, snap in the cover, and put a little Loctite and screws and screw it in. So up to this point, it's been interesting. And this makes a little bit of a mess. I did it on the other side. It's not too god-awful. This time I won't put as much on. So, so far so good. Alright, so here it is. Completely installed with the lens cover on. Looks pretty good. Blends in nicely like they say. Here's the other side. This one, I mean, I hand drilled these with a drill, so actually they're slightly off by about 1/8 of an inch from side to side, because the drill bit, even though I was using that Gator drill guide, still had a tendency to crawl a little, mainly because the steel's so hard on the crash bars with the hardening and or chrome. So it crawled a little, but I got everything to line up. I mean, I didn't have to re-drill, so the screws lined up with the holes that I drilled on both sides. It's just one is slightly, like I said, probably 1/8 of an inch higher than the other, but I'm not going to care since I'll be running down the road and probably not even notice it. Give me a second here. I'll close the garage door, turn the lights off, and we'll see what she looks like.